All right, hello, we're live. Welcome
Hello,
to Table
hello.
Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. It's gonna be a pretty mellow stream today. I feel like just kind of sitting around chatting. Though, got a good question. I think we're gonna have a lot of fun discourse today on talking about what constitutes terrible builds.
Yeah, I'm curious because I feel like I have a gut answer, but then I feel like I'm gonna be pointed out to some genuinely good answers that'll be like, make me think. Maybe I re-change my mind.
I think it's gonna be one of those scenarios of like guns don't kill people, people kill people. There's no bad builds. There's just bad players.
Yeah, because that's my thing. I don't think there's any such thing as a really bad build unless you're intentionally making something bad. If you're having fun, you've won. That's always been my stance.
Yeah, but see, like I kind of I don't necessarily agree with that because your fun could definitely be not fun for everyone else.
Oh, true. But does that make the build bad?
Yeah, I don't know. See that it's like where does it
trash
end?
is another man's treasure.
I mean, again, like I said, I think it's really just gonna boil down to bad players make bad builds.
That is fair. However, we have a good number of people in the chat. We wanna shout out the thing. Let's have a Discord announcement ready right now.
It is always bad when your GM hands you an item that's just completely unusable.
That too. That's pretty shit.
Though, to be fair, I don't know. Because sometimes I do that, like the Suffocating Trident. Like, it's a cool item, but no one in the party could really utilize it well.
Not really.
But it was cool, just what the enemy had.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing, is sometimes it's just about presenting opportunities to your players. And your players won't take all opportunities presented to them. Like, my players, someone could have really, like, dove into it, but they're like, meh, rather not. And I understand. I'm not too upset about it.
If you made the trident a little longer, it would have been a main weapon.
Yeah.
You let me use an extra hand, you know?
Yeah. It's true. But then it wouldn't be a trident.
True.
It'd just be a three-pronged spear.
True. Which then it should do extra damage because there's 3 points, like a spear.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that. I'm making a game in the background, and I was thinking of different weapons to utilize when the setting opens up to having, like, melee weapons. And I was like, what's the damage of a trident? Is it more or less than, like, a spear?
Well, because a spear has a pointy bit, but a trident has a more pointy bit.
Yeah, right.
More. And then would a quadrant...
I think that's a pitchfork.
Pitchfork, maybe. But, like, wouldn't that do even more damage? And then the meta for your system becomes, let's just shove as many points on like a spear as we can. How many, like, extra points can, like, I fit on this stick?
You know, I would so love a TTRPG's oh, my music is super loud. A TTRPG's meta just revolves around how many points they can put on a weapon. I think that'd be so funny.
There's a guy who's like, I put 12 points. It's a 12-point trident, and he like can barely lift it.
I just like the idea of the trident meta.
Yeah. Though, real quick before we go into it, do have a thing we gotta shout out real quick.
Well, we can shout that out when we're a little more along, because we'll probably want more people around.
That is fair. Yeah, I guess.
It.
All right, chat. You wait your turn, and you'll get to see.
Yo, make a pitchfork piezo. They already have somewhere. Like, I've been seeing a lot on Twitter. Well, I mean, I don't got anything definite at the moment, but I've been seeing a lot on Twitter people complaining about Paizo just releasing content after they come up with good homebrew ideas.
Yeah.
A lot of people have it. Even the developers come on, they're like, you know, it's the best thing in the world when you just, when you come on and you see people asking for stuff and you're like, hoo, guess what we got cooking up?
I mean, how many times has it happened in, like, our stream games?
Heck yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I did like a ghost companion creature almost a year before it came out with Paizo stuff. So, you know,
Yeah.
like,
Or even, like, some of the Eldritch stuff that Dark Omen added.
yeah, it's just, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, I don't know. That's one of the strange questions that comes up when you are designing a game is like you want your weapons to be diverse, but when you get a weapon that just feels like a different or like it's like a trident versus a spear, it's like, okay, what's the difference? Well, the trident does more damage.
Yeah, it should. The more points something got, the more it hurts you. It's one of the irrefutable truths of our world.
It's a very interesting question. I mean, like, I think in the end, it really just boils down to when does it stop mattering? You know what I mean? You if you shove a spear through someone's gut, is it really gonna make that much of a difference whether it's a single point or 3 points?
I feel like there's a point when it's overkill. Like, there's like a point where, say, like, oh, you have like a 7-pointed trident. You're like, that is the same functionally as an 8-pointed trident. Like, functionally.
Where is where's the diminishing returns on pointed tridents?
There is a trident plateau, and you just have to figure out where it is.
We should make this a meme on the channel.
This is just what it is, you know?
This is why I can't wait for us to get further along. Just ignore him. Just ignore him.
I'm gonna time out Devin.
That only gives him more strength. You only validate his existence.
I know.
Just ignore it, like I do. I can't wait until we have more people. We're like, oh man, that'd be a great meme. And 10 seconds later, someone posts it in the channel as a meme. Like, you have to wonder, like, the world is full of so many people, right? Yeah. Where people just do things that you can't even imagine even caring a little bit about. There's people out there who go to streams, they hear something, they're like, oh, an opportunity, and they're like, they go on and typing on their keyboards to make a meme literally as fast as possible. And man, could I not be fucked enough to give a shit to do so?
Yeah, usually same. Unless I'm hit with something that I can, like, edit and do, like, you know, open up my Adobe and work on, or like a good Photoshop will do it. But that's really it. That's because that's my skill set. I am jealous of the people who can, like, just bang out like a fucking, like, art or anything like that, like digital art. It's always super impressive to me. And that's the thing I'm excited for. I can't wait for the thing of say a thing and then someone's like, I made art of the thing you made a joke about. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
People are like, oh damn, we're popular finally.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I also just really want to have that kind of community to kind of like feed off of and to nurture and to make into something that's a lot of fun for a lot of people to come to. It's crazy. A year ago, our Discord didn't even exist.
Yeah.
We're
and
now
for
at...
like a good while, it was just like barren.
Well, it's not even just that. It's just literally a year ago, we did not have a Discord. I can't remember when the Discord actually got made.
Yeah, I don't remember. It was like I mean, it was great. Set it
I
up.
think it was early. I think it was early in the year. I think it was like February or something, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. And I look at our
But
Discord popping with builds and all that. I love reading, just seeing all the fun, cool ideas people are having.
I'm so stoked about the people making games and like recruiting in our channel. That's been going on a lot
That too.
lately too.
It'll be a thing. It's a thing for this community. Anyone who does like any sort of art stuff or running games or just even making stuff for like Pathfinder, fucking like shout out in the Discord wherever. You'll be that's completely encouraged and will be like promoted. Just
Yeah.
like, you know, make stuff. We'll be very happy to see it.
We also got a self-promotion channel, so you
Yeah,
can
we do.
go drop your stuff in there, and then, you know, if we see anything that's like particularly interesting, we can, you know, shout it out ourselves elsewhere. Just something to allow players to feel like their stuff matters, because it does.
Yeah.
Like, I'm all for really showing off what tabletop communities are all about, because there's so much really cool stuff, honestly. I mean, look at Critical Role. Literally a live play experience that had no real major hopes of doing anything very exciting, that just became a phenomenal existence that has its own like animated series now, and they're working on another season, and like it's come to life, and that just comes from people's literally. Critical Role would not exist if it wasn't for all the people who are so hyped for it.
True.
Because in the end, it's still a live play.
Yeah.
I still struggle to watch. Like, I watched all of season 1. I watched almost all of season 2. I think there's still like 2 episodes I gotta finish out, the last 2. I've not done anything with season 3 so far.
Same. I can't really watch live play stuff. It's not something I can really pay attention to.
But see, that's the thing. Like, I can't either. It took me a long time to get to season 2 to like try to finish it out. I was only motivated when season 3 was starting to like get ready to come in to like try to catch up. But in the end, like, it's a live play. It's one of probably the least entertaining styles of tabletop like entertainment, I would say. Like, some people can make it really good, but I feel like I think Dimension 20 has the best live play format, which is a edited down and very centered around the entertainment value of it rather than actual roleplay. Not that they don't have actual roleplay stuff, but like...
Yeah, there's like very good moments of that, but it's very focused on making an entertaining product over showing an actual campaign in progress.
Mm-hmm.
It is a product for entertainment first, is what it feels like. And granted, that's to an extent, that's what Critical Role is as well. Because at the end of the day, that is the beast you do when you're running a popular thing. But they're different like formats. I prefer the Dimension 20 stuff because it's streamlined, it's shorter, like 5-episode campaigns, each with like each like 2 hours long, like that kind of thing. It's just easier to follow.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, well, I mean, like I said, Critical Role runs just like a normal live play does. The only difference is the people, really.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the cast of Critical Role would not be nearly as big. I would even say Dimension 20's cast struggles to match what Critical Role has. The only thing that the Dimension 20 has, I would say, over Critical Role is some of the comedic value of like Brennan Lee Mulligan, for instance.
Yeah, it's the difference of professional voice actors and actors to improv comedians who like studied at UCB, because that's where most of them got their start, is UCB theater, and then a lot of them are in College Humor because that's where College Humor kind of got its start. And like that's where all that is. They're just people who have been doing comedy stuff for like a good 10 years or so. So then they just
Right.
kind of moved it to D&D, where they can just do improv comedy, but through D&D again. So it's the difference. It's the difference of like what the format is. One is a like an actual D&D campaign, like an epic narrative, and then the other one is like a long sketch comedy like episode.
And you know, there's actually something else as well. It just hidden in this world, right? You feel like we know generally the popular tabletop podcasts or whatever, but then there's like Glass Cannon or whatever it's called.
I've never heard of that.
What is it?
And I mean, then the one that got just shouted out in chat, NADPod. I don't know. I don't know what that is. Well, granted, it's I'm the worst one to come to when it comes to live play stuff. I personally don't like the format of live play, like D&D. So it's at least entertainment wise, it's not something I watch for fun. So I don't know any names in the circle. I watched Adventure Zone back in the day for their first campaign, which I thought was fun, and then I haven't really kept up with them at all.
Yeah, Glass Cannon is apparently huge, and it does Pathfinder content. And I never would have known about it if I didn't find out about it at PaizoCon.
Is it a Pathfinder one?
Yeah.
Oh.
I just said it was originally Pathfinder First Edition, and now they've moved it to Pathfinder Second Edition.
Nice.
And it's huge, popular, literally getting millions of listens on their podcast.
How the hell have I not heard about it? I'm actually,
Right?
I'm nowadays like, you know.
Yeah, they also
actually-
do a bunch of other games as well. But like
Nowadays, I'm a lot more like I have a better touch on the on like the Pathfinder scene, like online. Like I've been actually paying attention a lot better than I was a few months ago. So I'm surprised I haven't heard about it.
Yeah, it's the world of podcasts. It's literally just the like there's a whole world of podcast broadcasting that apparently has a huge following and is a big thing that you just don't hear about in most other spaces. Because literally, like Glass Cannon, for instance, they have live shows that they do all the time for people to go watch as well. Like actual like events and everything. It's real nutty.
Yeah, goddamn.
And it's so, you know, but that's the thing, right? None of these things would exist if it wasn't for the communities of tabletop. And I think that's something I struggle with as a content creator in the field, because I don't know what exactly people want, right? Because a lot of what people say they want are like guides, tier list videos, do this, do that, and those do well, but they're never the things that do the best when it comes to tabletop stuff.
True. I feel like the stuff that does like the absolute best is animated story time shit. I feel like that's like the top like performing thing for a lot of it.
Well, it's that, and it's like tabletop horror story stuff as well. There's a few channels just like Crit Crab, just a channel completely based on telling terrible D&D stories.
Now just telling like Reddit stories.
Right.
Like they've changed. They do more stuff now. But to be fair, I expected that pivot. I was like, how much can you get out of that?
A lot in tabletop, actually. Like, it's never
There are
ending.
a lot of. Oh my god, there's a thing I recommend listening to. There's a YouTuber I like who also does a podcast, Mandalore Gaming. I really like him. I like his weird videos on like old adventure games.
But he has some absolute fucking weird stories in his life. One of his more interesting ones is this story in a D&D group he was in, where a guy just kind of appeared one day, like no one knew who he was, and was just this like very strange figure in their D&D lives for like a month or so. It's the I think it's the Stop Talking podcast. I'd look up that story. It's very interesting if you want just a goofy little tabletop story. He tells it better
TTRPG
than I
space
can.
has a high percentage of cringe by volume.
Yeah.
That's true.
Good old Adventure League, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just because tabletop, I mean, I guess you can't even claim it anymore. It used to be the gathering point of people with terrible social skills, but now so many people do it. It's still kind of that, but it's now just because it's general space rather than just being mostly concentrated on that.
Yeah, it's just when you get a lot of nerds in an area, like most times, more than not, you get a large gathering of weirdos. Though, like, I am so fucking happy that my local Warhammer scene is actually chill. I would have dropped this game fucking rapidly if it was like on par with some of the Adventure League shit we had.
Yeah,
Couldn't. I'm not gonna deal with that. But instead, I have an entire cool group in town.
Yeah, I struggle with a lot of those situations as well, especially because I count myself as being a very hardcore tabletop, enthusiast, and I'm also like a big narrative enthusiast. And so I really want tabletop and games that have very impactful, meaningful stories that you can go and have fun at too. I mean, like, you can still have your humor and you can still have your silly things in tabletop, but it doesn't mean that your game has to be all about that or has to be no stakes or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, Lentho. I think you're very right. I think that's a very astute way to look at it. It's just a space of people whose imagination has run a little too wild.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. And also it's the idea of you have a lot of people where like some behavior is normalized. That's how that your group acts. Or it's that like thing of just people with very low social awareness, which does happen, where someone doesn't realize how like cringy they're being or that they're bringing down the vibes of an area. Some people just aren't as aware that like that they're acting as this like social vampire sucking the fun out of everything.
Social vampire is a good way to put it. Yeah.
I mean, it's a term I hope I'm using correctly. I know there's like a spiritual term for it. I just use the definition for
energy vampires are people.
The person that just like when they're around sucks the entertainment and fun out of an area.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and to be fair though, right? Like, it's just one of those things of this happens no matter what space you're in. No space that has a big enough following is free of these kinds of people. The difference was in the past with tabletop, it used to be like 80%, 90% that cringe. But now it's actually been lessening over time. But it's more common, so you run into that cringe more often. Like, now you just see that cringe all over the place rather than needing to go like to specific forums or locales to pick up on it. Because like, I mean, I ain't no grognard, right? I wasn't one of the people playing back in first edition or AD&D or whatever. But I've been doing it for a long time before it was cool, for sure. And it's just something that like eventually it went from a thing that only nerdy people got together to do who weren't the best at making friends, who didn't go to like the parties or anything that, happened at their school, and they just played Yu-Gi-Oh! During lunch instead. To now literally everyone is just like, hey, you want to just come to my house and play D&D tonight? Yeah, totally. That sounds like fun. kind of stuff.
Yeah, very casual
Where-
D&D.
It's very casual. People have fun. They're like rolling the dice and just
Yep.
acting out all the fun, zany stuff.
That's games I ran. That was the energy. And because if you can't meet often enough to do like an actual serious campaign, just run stuff that's entertaining for a day. Have like these 6-8 hour games that are just kind of fun,
Mm-hmm.
kind of fun and goofy, and you can just kind of hang out.
Yeah, heck, that's what I did a lot of time. Like, all my friends were a lot more socially adept than I was. I was still kind of on the fringes, but but we just go play tabletop all night, drink soda, go like for a midnight snack run or something, and it'd be fun. And it like we do it all the time. I even remember one time we went to go hang out at like a friend's place. And then, like, this girl I liked was there, and it kind of turned into, like, a cuddle event, which is something that, like, right, wasn't a thing for D&D nerds a while ago. It wasn't like, oh, yeah, I gotta go hang out with this girl I like, and then maybe we can, like, cuddle or something. It's like, you go and you want to roll some dice. But that's just how casual it was by the time I was getting to high school, Or it just became the thing that kids would just go do to hang out, And, like, I think another crazy thing about tabletop as well, at least in a lot of my experience, it's a really mixed crowd, honestly. A lot of men and women and anything in between, doing it.
I mean, I'll say I've actually been in a game or two that's predominantly not men. Either women or female presenting or anything else really.
Yeah,
it's been a lot of games or just nerd circles I've been in where it's like it's not male dominated anymore.
I literally can't think of the last game I was in that was all men.
Same.
Maybe early at Adventures League when there weren't that many people around. That's the earliest I can think of, but like everything else, even like before that, predating that, every time we would have games, someone would bring like their girlfriend along who also enjoyed it, and or the reverse, some girl who was our friend would bring their boyfriend along, and but it's just it's really interesting. It's very crazy how much it's shifted, and I think the growing pains are really being felt in the community now, especially. A lot of people who miss tabletop the way it used to be. The space has changed in a lot of ways. Heck, even D&D has rapidly been changing over the course of the last 5, 6 years, 7 years. Just to kind of incorporate this new crowd of people, and it's very fascinating to watch.
That's the fun thing for me, where it's like I got into all this D&D stuff around like 2016, 2017. So, like, this new shit's the only shit I know.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the thing of like I fully don't see like Grognard's point of view. I guess like I don't get it. I don't know. And when I hear stories about how old D&D and tabletop stuff used to operate, I'm like, that sounds like ass. What are you talking about?
One thing I've stopped doing as much because I keep seeing it and it actually really annoys me. Size and pulls out a walker. But we like tabletop players of all varieties here too. Like Grognard is a bit derogatory, but like the Grognards call themselves that all the time as well.
Yeah.
So, and it's more reserved for people who are more like they want to tell the very specific AD&D or first edition D&D stories. Let me explain Thaco. Yeah. And there's just people, it's mostly just people who prefer the game one way, know, is what it's being mostly referred to. So if you like tabletop as it is now, then you're not a Grognard. But so I was saying, so one thing I've stopped doing because I hate when I hear it now all the time, because I would used to say a lot, I've been doing tabletop for like 20 years.
Yeah.
Because I started really young, and it was something that I was just like, it was like, yeah, I've been doing this a long time. I'm very into it. It's something that, like, it's one of the few things I can claim with that much, like, tenure. But now I see it literally all the time thrown in people's faces, like, well, I've been a GM for 30 years. I've been a GM for 40 years, so you should listen to what I have to say. Of all these people who just come in and just like, I've been doing it a long time, so, you know, obviously my opinion matters more than most people's.
Yeah, it's the argument, like, appealing to authority. It's that logical fallacy. Also, is that... I mean, besides how funny that comment is that actually how it worked back in the day? Is that... That sounds bad. That sounds really bad.
I don't know. I played a very small amount of AD&D.
I know fuck all about it. I just know the old art was really funny.
And to be fair, when I played that was literally like almost 20 years ago.
I like the old Modron art. Like the AD&D.
Yeah, 2E
Modron
multiple
art.
attacks, yeah.
Yeah.
I played a wizard, to be fair. I remember
fair.
rolling up a character with, I think, like 3 hit points or something.
Goddamn.
Yeah.
It's the that's the thing I like, that the attitude has shifted towards, like, that I've seen at least, is I don't like the old style that a lot of people like posit of, like, the meat grinder campaigns, where it's like, yeah, you gotta come up to sessions and you make multiple characters per session. And I'm like, I can't make a single character most of the time. Like that, like, how am I gonna get invested in a game if I put all this work into one guy and then that person dies? I like it because I can really get invested in a person's whole shit. That's the fun I like. I like really analyzing like a character, because I'm a big fan of like character study shit.
To be fair, that wasn't really like, that wasn't the whole style. There are people who did do more like narrative style kind of games.
No,
it's as varied as it is nowadays, really.
Yeah, that's just the thing I hear the most. People being like, the good old days.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just because it was a harder game. And when D&D was first conceived, it was a more personal war game.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the Tomb of Annihilation was literally Gary Gygax making an infuriatingly easy to die in tomb for his super power gamer friends.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, it's also true. That's where Warhammer got its start. The Games Workshop was a company that just made like minis for like D&D and shit, and they just had so many. They're like, if we made a game where you just played as these minis, then like people would be, you know, they'd buy more of them.
Yeah.
I get more. I guess I have this very strong line in the sand of war game and tabletop RPG where I play them completely differently. Because war games, oh yeah, I'm fucking crunchy and meta. And then tabletop games, I'm like, here is my man. The build, what the fuck is a build? This is what my guy would have.
Yeah. Good segue into talking about builds. But before that, now we can do our announcements since we got about 10 people here in chat.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You know what? You're the one who worked on it.
I did work on it. And there's going to be a thing in the Discord real quick. So, sorry, not sorry for an ad, everyone. So, I've talked about before. Talked about this before. But we're making a thing that makes it a lot easier for you to recommend tabletop systems for a monthly one-shot thing. And specifically, I have created a Google form for you to fill out, go to, and give us all these fun little details. Go in there, pitch your system, get me to like and care about it. Because I pointed out in the form itself, the more you sell us and really like hype up your thing, the more willing I am to really present it and be like, this one should be on the poll. So go wild, have fun.
And I should put it on the Discord. Boop.
Yes.
127 plus people. Damn, Discord.
Yeah, we got a lot of people. It keeps going up. It's crazy.
I haven't heard of this game called Pathfinder. What? Pathfinder? They find it yet?
They find that path yet?
Where the fuck is it?
But also something. So we will. I'll say normally I would have done it a little sooner, but I just got done with a one shot this week of doing a one shot for Halloween, and my brain's still a little fried because I pretty much made up a whole game in one day. So
Wait, a very good one. So like, so honestly, like, good on you. That was a good one shot.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. It blended in one of my favorite Souls games with my favorite tabletop games, actually. So,
Yeah.
it was
also,
match made in heaven.
I completely agree with the petition to change One-E to Path Found, because it was found. There's a new system now.
That's true. It's true. But so we will have that up for a week, and then next Thursday we will gather up about 4 or 5 and we'll run a poll on what y'all would like to see for our next game coming up. So
yeah, well, they'll be fun. And as well, I'm gonna operate behind the scenes of the a lot of the responses. Well, actually, probably all of them, because I mean, I imagine a lot of you are able to fully fill out a poll and a forum, and like with all the information I request, and like have this list of everything we need. And I will try my best to limit my bias, Cass, because Madoka Magica fanbase tabletop, none of that appeals to me. I hate all the words in that sentence. None of those words are in the Bible. I don't like it. So I will do my best to limit my anti-anime bias.
I mean, in the end, it's like 4 or 5 picks, and then, or we might even just do random, like just like some random ones to throw into the poll.
If there's anything that I like, listen, I'm very susceptible to just, if you just describe things that are cool or hype, that the shit that will, like, you know, get me pumped up, I'll fucking sell it for you. The more you appeal to me, the better you can get your tabletop system up there. Make it as personal as possible, because I'm going to be the one really reading every single thing and actually delving into it. Cam can do it as much as he wants, but I fully am taking on this job.
That's fair. And yo, I love Big Eye Small Mouth. It's a really good game.
What is that?
It's anime tabletop. It's pretty much what it is.
Just bits of Alex dragging them to the trash bin. Anima doesn't count. Shut up. Anima doesn't count. Anima doesn't count because I like it.
You always fall for this trap, Alex. Every time you're just like,
no,
I do weeb stuff, and everyone's just like, all right, pulls out the list of all the weeb shit.
Name
Alex
the weeb shit I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Shut up. I like Berserk, but that's an exception. I really like Chainsaw Man, but that's an exception. Because it's good. Ignore the fact I have a Berserk tattoo. Shut up.
Yeah. You can't win this.
No, I can't. But I'll still fight for it.
You keep building more and more incriminating evidence against yourself, too.
Because it's funny.
It really doesn't help. It is funny.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so, we will be looking into it. We'll run a poll, and we might even push it back to, like, early December rather than late November, depending on how everything is going. Just because, end of November, Thanksgiving stuff. And like I said, I'm still kind of recovering this week. This would have been the week to pick the game out, or to at least set the poll, because we also run the poll for a week. So if we set if we pick out the games and then set the poll next week, that means we wouldn't know what game we were playing until the 17th of the month.
Yeah.
So we might do it like early December or
we'll get a thing figured out. And to answer both of those questions, it is not an anime if I like. No one else's opinion matters in my head.
And the how many exceptions before I admit I like it? Infinite. I've made a gut opinion over a vast thing. I'm gonna stick to it. It'll be a cold day in hell when I admit I'm wrong. So I'm not wrong. I'm correct.
I can't wait to have a big enough channel of people who will just catalog every time you say that. I know I'm correct, and then we'll just have a montage of just cut bits of all the times where you die on a hill.
I would absolutely fucking adore a compilation of all the times I'm incorrect or being a hypocrite about something, about an opinion. I would like lose my shit. New footnote in the wiki.
New footnote.
I would love a catalog of like, because it'd be so fucking funny if I very matter-of-factly state something and then it immediately cuts to me like, counter contradicting myself.
Yeah.
Or direct evidence proving I'm wrong. That shit would be so funny.
It would be really good. But yeah, so talking about bad builds.
Yeah.
And what constitutes a bad build versus not a bad build. And for the most part, I think we'll just use like Pathfinder as examples, but you know, any games are valid. And I don't know. I think this is kind of multifaceted, right? Because I feel like the idea of there are no bad builds, only bad players is accurate. But simultaneously, one of the things I do a lot for our games is I help guide my players to play their characters in ways that is not only thematically good for them, but also mechanically fun for them as well. Because Pathfinder especially, depending on your build, your turns, like what you do on your turns, the number of actions you can take, how your character feels mechanically can change drastically based on your choices. And so a lot of what I do is to ask my players like, okay, what do you like? Or I see you're struggling with this. Is there anything, you know, I can do to help you out to make it feel a little bit better? And so I feel like because I can come up and say, hey, let me do some things to help augment your build to make it more fun, that means that the opposite is true, and there's ways that builds could be done worse.
No, that's true. I guess it's the I don't know. It's always an interesting thing because it's always something like I've never really put much stock into, like the idea of like making builds and all that. Pathfinder's the exception because it's actually fun to make a character in the system.
It's actually a really fun system for making builds. I actually have gotten hooked on it.
Yeah, and like whenever I make a character, I'm not making a build. I'm making a character that has the things they have because it fits their character.
Mm-hmm.
Like my wizard, from the stuff I was getting told about like on stream before and on Twitter, like my wizard is not a meta wizard. I am not using like staffs that much. I'm not using like one other like thesis that everyone told me was really good. Because like meh, I didn't see the fun in it, and also I didn't fully understand what they were talking about, so it's bad automatically. You know me. But for my character, I picked the meta magic thesis because it fit him, like it fit William more to have like this a tool for every option, and like having access to like I can alter my spells or even just have easy access to conceal spell because he's a little criminal. And like I think at least in Pathfinder, even in like 5e to an extent, like I don't think it's possible to make a bad build unless you're actively like trying to make something bad that does not. If you're making something that's fun, good for you. You've done it. But then, you know, then there's the idea of like, but what about the if it's fun for them, not for everyone else? I don't know. I see more people who build that though, like are objectively good meta builds that are the ones that are anti-fun for the table.
I guess for my definition of like what's a good build, my thought process is always, is it a character you enjoy like playing? Are you having fun each week coming to the table? Are you excited to play your character more? That really shows you're making a good build. If you're not really enjoying your character, then yeah, bad build. I'll say Adrian wasn't great because I wasn't enjoying myself in combat as much as I could have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cash, I think, put it well. Worst builds are the builds that you just get bored of.
Exactly. And I like the idea of playing a magic caster where I have more options than I attack, I recharge my spell strength. That's really all you do.
Dead Phoenix, yeah. Sabotaging your character, I think, is different than actually just making a bad build.
Yeah, and that's the thing. At least it seems like with Pathfinder, I think you have to intentionally make something garbage to have something be garbage. Which, imagine that for a one shot.
Right.
The non-functional character. There was a one shot I was going to run for 5e where all of us were playing a character that had a 8 in every stat except for one that had a 20. And like seeing just playing that, I was going to play a stand-up comedian bard who was like in debt because he's not funny.
Interesting.
Like that was the whole one shot we were going to do. Never happened because we never that group kind of fell apart, but nah.
Well, something just came to mind as well, since you mentioned that certain characters, certain builds are fun in one-shots over long campaigns.
Yes.
And this is something, I recently had a video on the channel called Rolling Stats is Dumb, which I originally posted because, one, I hate rolling stats, and two, I thought it would be a very big, like, controversy pick that people would come and comment on and get a lot of views. But apparently a bunch of people actually disagree with that, or just agree that rolling stats is bad. Yeah. Because in longer games, it feels worse to have like a character who didn't roll well versus a character who did roll well.
Mm-hmm.
Because the difference just gets further emphasized as the game goes on.
That sounds like an excuse to throw some really high level shit at your party. Yeah, if you're really like building your party like you would if you're playing a CRPG, trying to create like the best party, that's something you'd do.
Yeah. So that's what Cash was saying, is that it's a good build, but it got boring because it made a lot of the combats trivial.
Yeah, you just win.
You just do the same things every time you do the combat. And that's another thing, yep. And like, this is what sparked the whole taking 20's bad take on the illusion of choice in Pathfinder 2e, because it just felt like there was only one pure meta way to play, and they were getting bored because they were just too in the meta. And it's like, that's why Pathfinder 2e is really good, and that's why I think it's really important to take the bonus archetype rule and my homebrew rule, which is the bonus archetype can't be a multi-class archetype. Because when you have that stipulation and when you use bonus archetypes, most archetypes do not give your character more power, but instead give your character more tools. Say you can do more things on your turns in rounds, perform more jobs, do whatever, is interesting to you at the time, and make some really interesting builds. And when you kind of cut out the class aspect to it, you are inherently making players, have to look at the actual archetypes to see what they can get out of them. Granted, there are a very good number of archetypes out there that are straight combat archetypes that are just really good combat archetypes, and it doesn't really matter if you picked a character or not. Like literally the two recently that we did on the channel, the dual weapon warrior and the duelist, you just get a ton of fighter feats in it. So if you're a fighter, you just get extra fighter feats.
Yeah, you just fight.
It's really good.
All that shit is. It's a trip meta, baby. Yeah, from what it sounds like in your home game.
Yeah, that's our game is very similar to that, though it's not completely about that. We definitely have a lot of things. Devin's character has some tripping, but he also is a recall, knowledge, intelligence fighter, which is really fun.
Yeah.
And we have a monk who has the wrestler archetype dedication, which wrestler is such a good archetype dedication.
Mhm.
So good.
Yeah, it's also what was said a little before. I do think at the end of the day, yeah, you are playing a character, not a bunch of numbers. Like, I think it's a big difference between playing a tabletop game and playing a video game. Because, like, right now, I've been playing through Kingdoms of Amalur, which I think is a phenomenal game.
It's so
I'm
good.
having a great time. It's so good. However, like, I am just a bunch of numbers at the end of the day. I don't give a shit what's going on in the world that much. I'm just enjoying the gameplay. Even to the point where I got to tell that to the big bad in a cutscene. I was really happy where he's like, finally, the child of dusk appears before me. And I'm like, I don't even know who you are. He's like, you will in time. Don't you know your place? And I'm like, I don't care. Those are like my two dialogue options. I was delighted to see that. I love it when my character is just as invested in the plot as I am.
Right.
But like, if I was playing a Kingdom of Amalur tabletop game, I'd make an actual person who fits in the world.
Right.
Because I am playing a person. I'm not playing like a stat sheet. That's boring.
Yeah, and see, and for me, and the big thing I really enforce on this channel is the blending of mechanics and narrative. Because I feel like a character needs to feel fun to play as much as the character's narrative is invoking enough to interest you in your character's story. I feel like those two things need to blend together perfectly to make a really good character. Because then, you know, you're having fun while you're doing combat, which isn't very roleplay heavy. And then you're having fun during roleplay when your character's story, whatever, comes out. I found recently, for myself personally, characters that blended that really together was like, I played an inventor dwarf, and he was just ridiculous, and his skag axe, which was a really fun, inventor weapon, had like a gun in it, and it could do all kinds of cool explosion things. And he was also like a big, heavy, armored fighter character. And he was also just like a very crude and crass dwarf who he likes explosions. He doesn't really give a shit about what people think or do around him. And it was just a lot of fun. He was just a character that I was just like, who doesn't give a fuck about anything. And it was fun to play that kind of character because I just got to be funny all the time without having to really think about it. And my Magus is similar. He's a backwoods, like, he's going out to kind of help solve a family curse that he has. And he learned magic and is kind of working more like a witcher in a sense. He goes out and fights monsters and such like that using a mix of martial and magic to survive. He has tools for all occasions and everything like that. But he's just kind of like a country bumpkin in the end. And he's not really that smart despite being a Magus. And it's been a lot of fun. But like the thing is like a lot of them are characters that I get along really well with the party and there's a lot of fun and I'm just kind of like doing whatever. But then the build comes in and I'm like, oh, look at this thing that like I can have all my utility. I can have like a character who is intelligently designed but not intelligent in game. And really benefit from a lot of those things. Way of the Trigger brand.
Yeah, could you by chance just real quick possibly show that in the Discord, please? That using combination weapons like that sounds hype. I might need to use that later.
Yeah, someone on Facebook cool. I saw was talking about it.
I don't touch that.
Way of the Trigger brand is a gunblade style gunslinger.
And it was said before, channel Smite cleric. Well, the difference is that Smite is only good in 5e. That's your problem. Smiting in Pathfinder is bad.
I disagree, but
it is okay to be wrong.
I disagree, but I do think it's not. there is, like, as much as I like Pathfinder, there are some just kind of not great choices. They're okay, but like, for instance, the Channel Smite Cleric, the whole point is to channel energy when you use a healing spell into your weapon to do a bunch of extra damage. But you're still using a martial weapon as a cleric, which means you gotta be a war priest, because war priest gets better proficiency, or at least gets it sooner, I think. But even then, like, war priest cleric doesn't get better than expert, so eventually you're just swinging at a 10% less accuracy than your allies, and it never gets better. And there's no real ways around it. It's like, I've been struggling because I want to play Witch, because someone was just like, Witch is trash, and so I want to prove them wrong by playing a good Witch. This is how I am. I'm spiteful when it comes to games. I want to take something that people think is trash and make it good. But Witch has a lot of feats, like Eldritch Nails, or Living Hair, which give you unarmed attacks. But you're a witch. Your class HP is 6 per level plus con, and you ever only get expert, and you get expert at level 11, which is 4 levels after everyone else goes to master.
That's why they're a B-.
So it's just like, it's weird. There's some feats that feel like they're just not designed for the class they're found in. Channel Smite can be really good when you put it on a champion that has some healing capabilities, or even like a Magus who gets access to like healing spells and stuff like that. Witch dedication mug. Well, see, that's the thing, right? The witch feats, some of them are just really good in other classes. My Magus has Eldritch Nails to give him an additional weapon. I have Eldritch Nails that bleed enemies, and then my Hand Wraps of Mighty Blows have disrupting on them to damage undead and ghosts. So even without his weapon, he can do some really decent damage. And like, I really like Eldritch Nails because it gives you an option to have a different unarmed strike that has different runes from what your unarmed, or what your Hand Wraps of Mighty Blow give you, because the runes are different for your Eldritch Nails specifically. It's really cool. Kind of shit on a witch though, honestly.
Yeah, that's the vibe of Witch. They're better on other things than by themselves.
Well, I definitely think there's some really good witches. I think an elemental witch build is really good. And with a lot of the buffs the occult spell list got with Dark Archive, a lot of the witch patrons, most of them are occult, got some big buffs along with it. So witch has a lot of spells. Also, witch is one of the few classes that can summon 2 creatures in a single combat
That is true.
at the same time.
Remember you telling me about that?
Yep. Not even Summoner can do it as early as Witch can, because Witch has Cackle.
Which
Costs him a focus point, but yeah, early game at least.
It just reminded me of this one summoner build I will play at some point. The summoner who is using the what become your Eidolon thing.
Yeah, the merge Eidolon.
Yeah, where I'm playing a character who has like this dark heritage that keeps popping up. So it's a character that's going along for the adventure, but actively doesn't like the idea of leveling up, because as he gets stronger, his ancestor gets stronger, and this like fated thing will occur. He's like this dark like fortune of like, you will bring about this like dark lord, and he's like, I don't want to, and it's like, by the way, combat starts, I'll pop out.
Yeah.
So it's like a different character in combat and then roleplay.
It's a very Hulk kind of aesthetic.
Exactly. But, you know, fiendish.
Yeah.
Because it's me we're talking about.
Yeah, I know. You literally just like, did you say devil? Did you say demon?
Devils and demons are cool. They're so cool. It's not my fault.
It's all good. But yeah, I mean, But yeah, like,
Agreed. By the way, Meld Eidolon needs more stuff. Once it gets like later levels, it gets really underwhelming. There's a lot of stuff that like when you're doing Meld Eidolon that just completely becomes useless. Like everything, like all these other feats become like dog shit. It needs a little bit more. I think I'd still do it, but it needs more.
I think it can work just fine, honestly. I think the biggest problem when you merge Eidolon, do you like become your Eidolon, or is it just your character is sequestered away into the Eidolon? That's a good question.
That is a good question. I just remember when I was building this character, like making this build, there were so many things like, oh, that's so cool, and it doesn't apply here. Okay. And I can't use it. Like, that was the whole thing. Was there a... What's the Pathfinder 1 version? I know nothing about Pathfinder 1, other than the shit that Mark Safter explained.
Sorry, what was the question?
Just commented like they were afraid of it being like the Pathfinder 1 version. Like, what was the Pathfinder 1 version like? Was it that ridiculous?
I didn't check it out at that time. I liked Inquisitor. Bring Inquisitor. I didn't do much with Summoner.
Oh, okay. It was just one type of play that was ridiculously stronger. The only other way I know about it is if that was in Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, which if it is, I do need to play because that sounds fun. It kind of feels like a lot of things for Pathfinder 1, though. Like, a lot of things in Pathfinder 1 were just ridiculously powerful. Or at least there's some stuff that was like, when you look at the equivalent in 2e, it's a lot more balanced now. That's the vibe I'm getting.
Yeah, the wording in Meld Eidolon is very confusing, but you don't become him. Because my thought was, well, could you use like martial artist feats with it, for instance, unarmed feats? But you can't, because it states specifically you can't act, so you cannot take actions.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's stuff that doing it like shuts off other things that like can be done with your Eidolon or your Summoner. So like it's that is the one thing I wish there were more feats for it, because or even an archetype for it, because it really does feel like when you're going down this really cool idea for build where it's like, oh, and then a lot of like this other stuff is just shut off for me because of like a keyword. Which is always kind of lame. I still think it's a fun build. I looked at it and I'm like, this is still like I think pretty good. Like, this is a functionally like strong character. It's just there's less stuff you can do. There's less options for good horizontal leveling, I'd say, which is always a sad part.
Your horizontal leveling would have to become actions you would take outside of combat.
Yeah, it's all social stuff.
Social stuff, or even like building items, or other actions, because it just says you straight up can't act. So it's I think theming it's interesting. And
I think the character concept is cool. So
yeah, I don't know. It's I think it's interesting, and there's definitely a way you could play it. You just essentially your character just becomes the Eidolon for combat purposes. And
the idea is that it's two separate characters.
Yeah, but like it is an idea for a character. You can have that kind of design with it, and then you can have moments where you're not doing that. You can swap between which one you want to do in combat versus not do. You know. And it does state that you manifest your Eidolon, so when you use the action, you do get an action. So if you're adjacent to someone, you could Hulk out and strike them in despite it taking 3 actions. So you know, it's definitely interesting, and it's definitely something that I feel like there's some ways to do it, but mechanically, I think this is kind of a lot of what I was saying as well earlier. Sometimes there is just like mechanically it wouldn't be as fun because you're removing options to play this character style. And so while the idea and the theme behind it would be interesting, it be kind of meh.
Yeah. It's I think if we were doing like a 5-session campaign, 5-10 session, I'd play him. I don't think I'd play him in Riptide. It's not a build I do for a long campaign. Like you mentioned, there are builds I think for one-shots or short campaigns and long campaigns. There are different things you bring. Like a one-shot character can be really gimmicky.
Yeah.
Because you're doing this gimmick once. Because if you play a gimmicky character in a longer game, you get bored of the fucking gimmick real quick. Like, I'd play a character like Calden for a short campaign. Because he's, at the end of the day, just a rogue that can do some really fun stuff. But he's not anything too crazy, like, deep of a character. I'd play someone like, the new character I'm playing in Riptide, William, where he has a lot more going on. There's a lot more story potential with William, where I have a lot of things that can pop up. I think there's some fun things like to bring up with I don't know if we have to go back to a wizard college that William has previously conned, or even just like the fact he's fucking cursed by an aboleth and there's some like dark shit going on with him. Like, there's a lot of avenues for story.
And you tied yourself in with our character's backstory in a way, so.
Well, we're at least acquaintances.
Yeah. I mean, and so that's interesting because that means I can do something and both of your characters can be somewhat involved, which is a really good thing to do as a player.
And even then, you have the knowledge that the item that is currently like the cursed item that he can't like remove is directly stolen from the forbidden section of a wizard academy, something they probably want back.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of great things to do with it, and that's just like...
That's a long campaign character. That's how you... That's what they do.
We'll definitely have to go over your spell list, because I feel like we'll need to give you some spells that give you some flexibility with your actions.
Yeah, I mean, you can take a peek at my spell list. I like my spell list a lot, because I'm trying to be more blasty cast.
Yeah. No, of course. I feel like what you struggled with when you played a caster before, though, was just the whole 2-action do a spell. Does it work? Does it not work? Okay. And then I guess I move or something like that. Giving you more options in your combat so you can do like a double spell, for instance, with like a 2 and a 1-action spell, or have some other actions you can do in tandem to make it a little easier.
That's fair. I think as well, this character could actually do recall knowledge. That helps.
Yeah.
Granted, depending on where they're from, it's more likely because he has some pretty good knowledge of the plane of water and aboleths and all that. But he's also at least very arcane and tuned and with some occultism. So if it's something magical, he'll know what it is. Yeah, because I played a unsurprisingly a devil sorcerer.
Yeah.
And that was my problem. Even though I'll still say I really liked playing sorcerer. I think it was a fun time. It was just that in the moment gripe of like, remember, I cast a spell and it fails and I do nothing.
Yeah, 5th edition is really bad about that. I really dislike it. But Pathfinder has so many really good spells that even if they succeed, something happens to them, and that feels good, honestly. It's like, oh, it could have been better, but at least it still kind of sucks for them.
That's also, it was the problem of, I think I would have enjoyed it more if I wasn't playing the Divine Spell List, because Divine Spell List early on fucking blows. God damn, it sucks if you're trying to play a DPS caster. Like,
early
and you're trying
game,
to use
rough.
Divine. Oh, it's great once you get past 3rd.
Yeah.
Once you get around then, great. But 100%, the 4-tier save system, like, once you get those spells that you cast and your action isn't wasted, unless, they crit succeed or, like, something like that, like, you're good. That's what I like about it. I have a lot of stuff like that. So at the very least, I think my spell list is pretty good. I think I'm going to enjoy this character a whole lot. But,
I mean, we'll just have to see. I haven't really looked into it, so I don't know.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, you feel free to take a peek at my spell list. See what you think.
Of course. I mean, I always do anyway.
Yeah.
Because I want you guys to have fun. I want you guys to like your characters. And there's some stuff I can't help with, like builds and setting yourselves up, or giving you guys ideas on like how you can take your character. Because I remember Booter wanted to play this smoke sylph. What's that one ancestry? Smoke sylph fetchling. It's all about shadows and darkness and all that kind of stuff.
I think I remember this.
Then he went into Shadowcaster and was able to use some shadow magic, and I skinned it as some entity took an interest and has given him shadow powers. And so rather than just being a gunslinger, he became a shadow manipulating, stalking sniper kind of character.
Mm-hmm.
Which was a lot of fun. And that just was because he was like, I don't know what to do with my free archetype bonus. I was like, hey, why don't we take Shadowcaster? And we'll because you do so many great things in darkness anyway. And it worked out for him.
Yeah, no. I remember hearing about this character and thinking they were very cool.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, bad builds in general are just builds that have a desync between the fun you have playing the character and the narrative you want to tell with your character. It's really important that, like, your build is something you're excited for, not just for the power you gain, but for what it means narratively for your character as well. One of the things I have for, like, my Magus, he's cursed with... His family was turned into these weird Catoblepus humanoid creatures. And the Catoblepus is, like, this horrid death cow creature. It's a creature that has, like, moss-covered fur, smells like shit. It kills things, and it's super evil, and they're super ugly. And everyone in his in the village he came from was cursed with it, and now his family is the last generation of the secluded clan of people, and he's trying to cure it because his little sister's, she will never marry anyone, and it really upsets her, and so he's managed to get a hold of his curse and, like, kind of he got a hold of it, and he's managed to, like, control it to the point where he doesn't appear as a horrid murder cow creature, and he's out looking for the cure or to get rid of it somehow. And recently at level 13 I got dire form because I skinned it as his curse is the manifestation of the beastkin versatile heritage, where you can turn into a creature, or where you're, like, part were creature in a sense. And I got dire form, which means his were creature form is a large creature.
That's always
so fun. Like, narratively speaking, it's something that's super interesting because now it hasn't been revealed to the party yet, and now, when it comes up, he'll grow into a huge creature, and it's really, really cool. And not only that, but when you're a huge creature, you get longer reach and everything like that as well. And so, like, it was a part of the build that was really good, but it was also, like, narratively is something like, yes, I have this thing. And so now, if it ever does get revealed, it will be a really awesome moment of him just turning into a massive, horrifying death cow creature.
Hell yeah.
Death cow's not the best way to put it. I'll show you an image of the Catoblepus.
Yeah, because, like, I'm thinking of something, and it's probably not accurate. Like the Diablo 2 cow,
No.
Aw.
I will drop this into tabletop discussions. Yeah, that's where we put our stuff we're doing during stream.
We usually put it in pics and vids.
Pics and vids. All right, pics and vids. Here we go.
Yo, Yeah, that's not what I was picturing at all.
Yeah, I figured. They're done a lot different. They're done differently in a lot of things, but the biggest thing is they smell horrid, and they're kind of really fucked up creatures. Like, they like torturing creatures to death, and they eat nothing but rotten stuff.
God damn. Not a very pleasant thing.
I mean, like, there's so many, like, the great thing about Pathfinders, there's so many really good builds, but I do feel like there's some mechanics in the game that are hidden to people. In fact, if y'all check out the tier list video that's coming out tomorrow, because I'm doing the tier list for the archetypes I've done since the last one, the Ultra Ego plus C through D archetypes, I'm adding them to my tier list. There's a lot of archetypes I talk about in that video specifically where I'm like, I don't know what their intention was for this. I feel like to get the most use out of this, you'd have to try a lot harder to do so, because the wording or how it mechanically like interacts with the game just doesn't work 100% right, or is very convoluted in a way. Like Cathartic Mage is one I have just the most issues trying to like, because Cathartic Mage's catharsis stuff is just extra hard to really utilize easily. And then the one ability they get to like get themselves to get into their catharsis can't be used with spellcasting, which most catharsis abilities, like when you're in your catharsis state, you get a special effect when you cast spells. But the action to work yourself to get into your catharsis is 2 actions, and then your catharsis ends at the end of your turn. So you can't use it to cast spells with it.
Huh.
It's very weird. Cathartic Mage is really good because essentially it enhances your spell list, because you get the extra like basic spellcasting benefits, expert and master spellcasting benefits, which just gives you extra spell slots, more or less.
Yeah, like
So
some useful stuff.
When you take Cathartic Mage, at the very least, you're giving yourself extra spell slots. But it's a very clunky and wonky archetype, and I just don't like it. Especially because you get an emotional fallout. So not only is your catharsis like have a very particular trigger that you need to hit to actually activate it, but once you're out of the state, which is normally 3 rounds, after 3 rounds, you go into a fallout, which oftentimes makes you weaker in some form or fashion. Like Anger, we can look at specifically, has a really easy trigger. An enemy deals damage to you. And if you're not fatigued, you can use your catharsis reaction. And its catharsis reaction is, if you're grabbed, immobilized, or restrained, you attempt to escape. If you succeed, the creature or hazard imposing the condition on you take force damage equal to your level. That's already rough, because in order to escape from those, you have to make a acrobatics, athletics, or unarmed strike. So if you're a wizard, that's gonna be really hard, usually. Yeah. And that means if an enemy damages you and you're not grabbed, you don't do anything. So, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see what you mean when you said you weren't a big fan of this one.
And then Emotional Fervor. When you cast a spell from your spell slot, if the spell deals damage and doesn't have any duration, you gain a status bonus to that spell's damage equal to the spell's level, which is really good. And it means your spells just do extra spell damage as long as they don't have like a prolonged effect.
Yeah.
Yes, Catharsis lasts 3 rounds. But if you use Work Yourself Up, which is 2 actions, It states here, your concentration on your mental state, tapping into raw emotional energy, take your catharsis reaction. So anger, for instance, you would blow out of a hold you're in, for instance, causing the catharsis activation and entering your emotional fervor as normal. The fervor lasts only until the end of your turn. At the end of your emotional fervor, you experience the effects of emotional fallout as normal. So, for anger, you would work yourself up, attempt to blow out of whatever's grabbing you, and then you have one action, and then your fervor ends, and you become fatigued until you settle your emotions, which is a 10-minute downtime activity.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very good.
Yeah, and you don't get to use the emotional fervor effect unless you have a one-action spell that requires a spell slot. So you can't even use a focus spell, for instance, to get this effect either. So, yeah, it's really not great. I didn't rate it that lowly, though, actually, on the list. I think it got like a B rating. Because in the end of the day, it's still just a archetype dedication that just gives you extra spell slots.
Yeah.
So it does do something, and for what I call the fantasy fulfillment, or like the aesthetic it gives the character, I mean, you have a character that has a very tight connection to some emotional connection, and there's some good roleplay that can be done with that.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of a bad archetype, in my opinion.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a very good like pick for a strong archetype to give you a lot of like bonuses. But if that's the aesthetic you want, it's pretty good.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like, again, anger's good because you just need to be damaged by an enemy and then your spells just start doing more damage.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not bad, honestly. And 3 rounds, most combats last between 3 to 5 rounds. Yeah. So your fervor is probably going to last through the whole combat. But like I said, they just some of the feats and some of the things, and not all of them are even that easy to trigger. Which is, it's a very hard, but that's the thing, right? There's just some archetypes that can add to your character, but they're just so convolutedly written or written for a very specific like idea that it feels really hard to implement them into other kinds of builds.
Yeah, good luck trying to implement like this archetype for a very specific thing into like literally anything else.
Yeah.
I've read a few like that where I'm like, this is very cool, but how the fuck would I use this unless I'm making a character for this archetype?
Yeah, it's like Bullet Dancer. You pick Bullet Dancer, you're playing a monk. If you're not playing a monk, you're not doing yourself a favor. Yeah. Despite them having feats that completely contradict picking a monk. But yeah, it's just one of those things of like, and to be fair, I feel like there could be a really good cathartic mage. Yeah, a flavor I might put it on a therapy psychic. Yeah, you know. Or, you know, heck, you could even put it on your summoner with rage problems who hulks out using Meld Island.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you wouldn't get any of your effects for it, but, you know, aesthetically, kind of be cool.
Yeah, it's an aesthetic.
You know, but yeah, and so like a lot of it when it comes down to builds is really just looking at what the game provides and finding ways to add it. The Dandy archetype dedication, which I think only got an A in my tier list, even though I think personally it's S material.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good because it's literally one archetype feat, and then you can just pick up the skill feats for it, and your character suddenly becomes a really good social character.
Yeah, true. It's a good one. I've fully changed my opinion on it.
Me too. Like I did it and I was like, that's really good. I just kind of overlooked this one, but like, nah, it's really solid. The only other non-skill feat is Gossip Lore, which is a Omni Lore, which is another really good thing to have. So it's just a really solid archetype. in general.
True.
Yes, I also love Captivator for non-spellcasters. I think it's really good. You know, actually, funny thing about this as well. I've been trying to make a witch for. We're gonna be doing my fiance is gonna be running Kingmaker for us
Ooh,
when we're done with Age of Ashes.
nice.
And Kingmaker's a really fun campaign, and I told myself, all right, the next class I gotta pick is a spellcaster, because I have yet to make a spellcaster.
True.
And I was like, okay, well, a part of me just wants to pick the caster that everyone likes the least so I can see if I can make it good. And I kind of ended up on Witch, because I feel like Witch is the least liked. But I could be wrong. I don't know. There might be a poll out there somewhere. If someone knows, like, a poll, let me know on, like, what classes people like. And, anyway, so I was like, okay, I pick Witch, right? And then I've been literally sitting here kind of scratching my head trying to, like, fit things in, because honestly, a lot of archetypes don't really enhance caster playstyles.
Not really.
The only one is, like, Shadowcaster and maybe something like Cathartic Mage, maybe something like Rune Lord, even though you have to be a wizard to be a Rune Lord. But it doesn't feel as flexible, because there are just a lot of archetypes out there that are just straight. Yeah, Halcyon Mage is really good. Hallowed Necromancer is another really good one. And there's some of the ones that, like, Reanimator, Dedication, but that's, like, very specific playstyle.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of, like, wizard-focused ones.
Wizard-focused ones, or ones that just have very specific playstyles. And it's been hard. It's not that, like, I couldn't make a very interesting witch build, because I think there's a really good one. I don't want to make an elementalist witch, and that actually reduces my choices quite significantly, actually. Because Geomancer is also really, really good.
Because that's something I was, I mean, granted, I didn't hit that problem, like, looking for archetypes. I had one clear one I wanted to do. But, like, Curse Maelstrom doesn't give me anything for being a wizard, or, like, gives me anything, like, extra tools like that. I just get extra shit because I want to be cursed and have this spooky thing. Gives me, like, some more stuff that can happen. But it's not, like, amplifying. It's not like a, I'd say, a spellcastery archetype. And the ones I can think of off the top of my head for casters, like, yeah, all I think about are, like, wizard ones. Especially anything with necromancy or, like, undead shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can still do it, like, with Witch as well. Witch is essentially just a wizard that can pick different traditions, honestly. But, like, the reason why I think Witch kind of gets the shaft is you look at Wizard, right? They're really cool. You have a school you can pick that has its own focus spell and what it can add to those spells. Plus, you get an extra spell you can cast every day. And they have a theorem that they can use to, like, change something about their character. You know, whether they have a better familiar, or they can swap their spells on a 10-minute rest or something like that. All really, really cool. Which gets a patron, which determines their spell list. They get a skill out of it. They get a spell, and they get a cantrip hex. The cantrip hexes are really, really good. Other than that, Witch gets familiar. The worst part is the wizard in familiar enhancements theorem does the same thing as just being a witch. Like, your familiar gets the same number of feats.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
And it's rough, and it just feels like Witch kind of got... Yo, Garson, what's up? It just feels like Witch didn't really get anything. Witch has some really good feats, don't get me wrong. Witch, I think, is still a really good class, but I feel like because the class itself doesn't add all too much interesting stuff, and some of its best stuff are in its feats, really, there can be a hard time really picking, like, Witch over something else and then just taking Witch feats, for instance. And I don't know, like I said, there are tons of archetypes, and don't get me wrong, like, archetypes, like, I could play a Witch that's dandy, or a celebrity even, really, even though celebrity is kind of not a really great archetype for Witch, but, you know, you could do it. But, like, dandy and be a face Witch, you know, easy. What I'm thinking I might end up doing is go Witch and then multi-class archetype into Bard, and having just a very buff, debuff support character that has, like, one of the using things like Dirge of Doom, or using like Inspire Courage, along with Fervor, which adds damage, along with maybe even summoning a creature to disrupt combat and everything like that. And everything.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, the hex spells are cool. Like, Witch has a lot of really good features, but I feel like base Witch with none of its feats, is kind of bad. Because, like, take a look at, like, Champion, for instance, right? If you picked no Champion feats whatsoever, you still get Land Hands, which is a really good focus spell. And you still get your Champion reactions. And your Divine Ally. Plus you get Shield Block. A really good feat. Just as a part of the class. All that kind of stuff. Witch gets base class with no feats included. A better familiar than other classes. The Wizard could do the same thing. And they get their patron, which gives them a skill, a cantrip, and an additional spell on their spell list.
Wow. Yeah, that's great.
Right.
Amazing.
It's like literally the base class doesn't offer a lot, so it's a really hard class to feel like it's worthwhile when you're thinking like multi-class archetyping or archetyping, because why not just pick another class that has some more interesting stuff that you can mix into it?
Yeah, play a class that, like, it's always that old thing with, like, a lot of games. Like, it's always the sad part, where you're like, oh, this thing is so cool, but this thing does that, but better. Or this thing will just give me the thing I want in a different aesthetic, but it'll function better. It's always really sad.
And Garza TV, bad builds, we're still kind of discussing what exactly that is, because we've come to the conclusion that it's like a player can make any build good or bad, but there are some builds that like don't play the way you thought they would, or you just get bored of. Which celebrity? You mean Dr. Facilier? Yes. Heck, Witch Medic, Blessed One Witch. Like, there's a lot of ways you could play Witch using a lot of the other archetypes as well. It's just, like, Witch has really, really good feats. And it has really good focus spells. Their lessons that they can pick up have a lot. Cackle is really good. Being able to sustain a spell as a free action by just using a focus point allows you to summon 2 creatures early, which is a lot of swing in a battle. You know, Deceiver's Cloak is essentially the same as the Face of the Spider or whatever from D&D 5e, where you can, it allows you to change your appearance. And they can do it like infinitely. Deceiver's Cloak is the same thing, it just costs a focus point, but you can restore that focus point, and it's a sustained duration, so as long as you're sustaining the spell, you are transformed. So you get essentially infinite illusory disguises, which is interesting. Elemental Betrayal, another really good one, enhances all damage from a particular element in a zone. Malicious Shadow, a really cool hex. I love this one so much. You target a creature, and you just convert their shadow into essentially a weapon. And they can't get away from it, and you can spend an action every turn when you sustain the spell to make a spell attack on them that does damage. It's really, really cool. Like, there's a lot that Witch really does offer that makes it very interesting. And not only that, but the narrative elements around the patrons is really good. The struggle with Witch purely just comes from the fact that the class itself, without any of its feats, feels very bare bone.
Yeah, I think, that's just kind of a thing with most casters, sadly, but it feels like, would you say Witch is like the worst offender of that? Because like I remember that with Sorcerer, where base Sorcerer is like, you get spells, and then there's these things.
A little bit. The thing is that the Sorcerer, your bloodline gives you access to unique ways that you can change your character. Through some of their feats, yes, but at least you can make choices when you pick a Sorcerer that are meaningful. There are actually no Witch feats specifically for specific patrons at this time.
Really?
Yes.
Oh. Damn, yeah, okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. A lot more. Goddamn. That's sad. Because that was like the one saving grace for Sorcerer for me, even though like most of my class feats were fucking boring. Cool, I can do this meta magic now. Yay!
Yeah.
Meanwhile, all these fighter characters, these martial characters, like, oh, I could do this cool type of attack, and I could do this action. They did
so well in this edition.
They did. Good on you, Paizo.
Yo, Hector, thanks for coming by, though. Go to have a nice rest. And Dark Ender. So, I don't know why my stream thing here isn't showing me the YouTube comments. I'm seeing it on screen, but I'm not seeing it in my sidebar here, which is very strange.
Because I'm getting it, like, I'm getting the YouTube comments like normal on the stream, but
yeah,
that's strange.
War Priest Cleric, I think people have the wrong idea about what it is supposed to be. War Priest is not a melee cleric, first and foremost. It's a slightly more melee-y cleric, but it's not really meant to be like the melee cleric. The whole point of War Priest literally is you have a much more durable cleric. Because you get access to shield block and you get access to medium armor. And even though you're a worse spellcaster, you can very easily pick a lot of spells and feats that don't require you to make spell attacks or have spell DCs, like Bless.
Yeah, with how helpful Fidget is in combat.
Yeah, like there's Bless, using heal. Hey, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, thank Cash for the follow earlier, and now thanks to Aston Clark Kemp for the follow as well. We've getting a lot of follows on Twitch lately too.
Oh yeah, I do also completely agree. They probably should have given it a different name, because when I hear the name War Priest or like War Cleric, I'm like, yeah, that's what that does, right? Because the problem is that's what the 5e War Priest is. Like, the War Priest Cleric in 5e is literally like a martial cleric.
like a very martially cleric.
Yeah, right. That's kind of like what people think, but no.
Yeah.
But see, the thing is the War Priest is incredibly durable. Hey, thanks, Lentho, for the follow. It's very durable. Medium armor. You have, I mean, Cloister Clerics don't have any armor proficiency.
Yeah.
So it's high dex or nothing. Yeah. But it's definitely, but I do understand where you're coming from. It's not good if you're wanting to make a very, like, do something kind of cleric. You don't think anyone is durable in this edition? That must be some kind of encounter design, because shield block is a really good damage mitigator, and with how ridiculous cleric healing is in general, you could be really durable.
We had a combat where this what level was Brandmaster again?
He was, I think, 8 levels above you guys.
Yeah, we kind of fought to a standstill. Like,
Yeah,
he could do nothing and we could do nothing, but we wouldn't die because of because of the amount of healing like that we were getting, especially from our cleric.
yeah. Champions damage mitigation is also really, really good.
Though, I mean, for all I don't know. I haven't played any previous editions of Pathfinder, so maybe tankiness was different in 1E or something, or even like before.
Well, I think a big problem about it as well is people always look at, like, okay, how good is my character against a creature at around my level, or like a boss creature or something like that. But actual encounter design mostly involves creatures who are a or several levels under you. Yeah, I don't know. We've had literally the exact opposite feel. So
that's curious.
yeah, it could just be a different style of game. Who knows?
No, 100%. That's always possible.
I know some people really had struggles with the APs. Our group has never, like, beyond Age of Ashes first chapter, which is really kind of rough, everything else has been a literal cakewalk.
I remember the Rune Lords one wasn't anything too crazy.
Early level Rise of the Rune Lords is pretty annoying because goblins could do a lot of damage, but like
even then I didn't feel anything too bad. Like it never felt like we were in over our head or out of our league.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Well, I mean, there's a variety of factors that play into that as well. There can be how the enemies are played, you know?
Yeah.
Like how they're operated. Some enemies fight more intelligently. Other enemies fight more just like attacking whatever's closer.
That's always true.
The 2 Chimera fight, yeah, is pretty fun. But yeah, our group didn't struggle with that. Well, we wouldn't have struggled. We actually ended up taking on that entire specific dungeon all at once because we blew up a wall. That almost resulted in a TPK, but we got through most of the enemies without getting to that point. It probably should have been a TPK, but we would have TPK'd on the last couple enemies.
It's always like a good way to enter a dungeon, just blow up a wall.
Well, we were in the dungeon and we did like the first area or whatever, and then we saw a wall. We were like, "Oh, let's blow a hole in this wall." We had dynamite, so it's like, why not? Or powder kegs or something.
Yeah.
So we are like, why not? And then we blew up, and how some of the rooms were segmented in the wall we blew up opened up like 4 chambers.
Hmm.
Well, the dying condition isn't necessarily a bad thing, though, right? HP is just another resource. A player going down doesn't mean the encounter is necessarily that hard. If anything, a good, difficult encounter requires a couple people to go down. Tired of being the healer? I mean, I feel that. There are definitely ways to make it really interesting.
As someone who never plays healer, thank you for your service. Because I will not take up that role.
And Cash, I mean, again, different play styles, you know. So, however you design it, there's no way to make a game that suits all play styles equally.
Nah.
And Artillery Tank, that in a Holy Trinity design sense isn't taking damage so much as it is about controlling who the enemy attacks. Yeah, I mean, like, I understand, and that's something kind of frustrating about some tabletop situations, because you do, like, I play Final Fantasy 14 a lot, right? And, like, the tank in that game has a aggro ability, and the enemies all attack them, and the healers heal them, while the DPS does DPS. And the danger comes from, like, mechanics that happen during the fight. But it's definitely a thing of, again, that really relies on the style GM, for instance, because if the enemies are always just gunning for your squishies and like taking hits just to chase down the squishies or whatever, that is a very feels bad kind of play style, I feel like, for a GM, because it makes player positioning seem almost worthless, or forces players to focus on positioning more than actually doing actions in combat. But, you know, if the enemies are intelligent, that's understandable, but most enemies aren't that intelligent and are more worried about preserving their own life or dealing with threats in front of them than, you know, anything else.
Yeah, I would rather just not get murdered.
But I do feel like it can be a little frustrating with the lack of, like, actual aggro in games, because, you know, just being ambushed can be a death sentence for some kinds of characters sometimes. I've already prearranged to replace this character in the chapter break no matter if we live or die. People hate the idea of character having a provoke. Really? People hate the idea of characters having a provoke type ability? Why? What people hate this? I am actually genuinely curious.
Same. Granted, like, it's always an interesting subject when it comes to tank stuff, because, like, I guess it's always the kind of thing of the tank I like to play. And granted, the only video game where I play a tank is fucking Overwatch, where I prefer the tanking style of, no, you don't look at them, you look at me. Because if you don't, I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to crush you, little man. Like, that kind of thing. Where the amount of damage I can output is so fucking stupid that you have to deal with it.
Right.
Like, that is my style of tank. That's one of the reasons I like 5e Paladin so much. I like tanking as a Paladin because it's like, no. Oh, you didn't like that smite, huh? Well, you better kill me then. I'll do it again.
And another thing as well that I think a lot of tables don't really take into consideration is frequency of dangerous encounters versus, like, just encounters to have this for encounter's sake. Because not every encounter should be potentially lethal. Sometimes the players just need to beat up on some enemies to feel good.
Yeah,
you know,
it's very handy for your table to be like, hey team, you're actually pretty cool because look how easily you smoked some shit that gave you trouble earlier.
Yeah, and like, it's just a thing. Like, not every encounter should necessarily be really hard. You need to create a dynamic flow, because when a group feels that they're always super pressured to perform at very high levels, they don't do a lot to, like, explore things they can do in combat, for instance, or they get buried in their routine for what they do for their characters to maintain efficiency, which can really be kind of anti-fun. Not saying you shouldn't have hard encounters. Riptide, I've had a mix of encounters of all kinds. Encounters where the players absolutely smash the enemies, and encounters that and the
screaming because we might die.
and,
Those giant gorilla things.
yeah, and then the near TPK style. The gorilla ones was definitely a bad encounter, but you know,
I mean, you couldn't have killed us regardless.
Turned it into shut up. I turned it into a bad encounter. It would have not been nearly as bad an encounter. The new design of Antagonize is a good design idea, though. Yeah, I actually really like Swashbuckler's Antagonize. It's really good. I'm playing a game without proficiency level, and the scaling is super wonky and feels bad. Very, very easy. Wait, what? I'm playing a game without proficiency level, and the scaling is super wonky and feels bad. Very easy for me. When monsters have +3 or more to hit by just being one level above you is hard to handle. Yeah, and proficiency without level.
That you can do, and
or add level 2 proficiency. I mean, either way, it's technically a +3 is the same in both. A +3 difference is 15% accuracy, or 15% more damage, depending. But I don't know. I don't personally like the idea of proficiency without level. I feel like the game, one, wasn't really designed with it in mind, and two, it can make powerful characters struggle to do some types of action. There might be some balancing. I mean, it's all just kind of number shifting around, and you could balance it either way, which is why I don't really see a point in really taking it out. But I mean, again, I think this is a conversation we've been having a lot here at the end, is different tables just play different ways. Honestly, you know, obviously, if you're going to have an encounter, lots of encounters that are designed to push your players to the brink, then the players aren't going to feel as tanky because, well, you know, if you're going up against a lot of really powerful enemies that can easily hit characters who have a higher AC, it's going to feel that way. But if you have a good encounter flow design where you're fighting creatures of all levels, characters will feel tanky against enemies that are, you know, of weaker levels or mob enemies, and then will take more damage and be more threatened against more powerful boss enemies. I mean, like, it's a game that if you understand it well enough, you can push your players to the brink without pushing them over.
Yeah, we've had a lot of games like that.
Yeah, I've done that plenty of times, and I make sure I balance those encounters out with encounters where the players absolutely smash to feel like, stop giving us your toughest battles. It's because y'all keep rolling stupid high on the encounter table every time.
Not our fault.
It's just like, all right, you guys get an encounter today. Let's roll on the dice, and they roll in like the 1 to 3 or 5 levels above party levels, and it's like, what can I do? It's the chance. It's the 100 no whammies, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know. So it's like encounter design. If you're playing the game and you're feeling like you're getting stomped a lot, you know, ask yourself or ask your GM, like, is that fun? If you make wearing heavy armor feel like it's useless, then that feels like a playstyle that is making certain choices, you know, not great. Obviously, y'all need to roll some random social encounters. I do throw in social encounters with our random encounter table. When I feel like the encounter I roll is not anything super interesting, or is something that we've done like a few times, so I was like, let me throw in like something else.
Like the definite combat that we're gonna have next session.
We'll have to see. Who knows? Definitely gonna be an interesting encounter for sure.
I'm very curious to see what it is.
I don't know. I guess with this conversation really ended up as the only bad builds are builds that you don't have fun with.
Yeah.
Because some builds can be fun in the short term and other builds are more fun in the long term. So really what constitutes a bad build, I think, is a build that doesn't take into consideration the game that it's being made for. Or the consideration of the other players.
Maybe at the end of the day, the real Pathfinder and tabletop we played was the friends we made along the way. That's what really matters in the end. Friendship and having fun. Right, Cam?
Right.
Don't look at me like that.
Right. But, like, in the end, it's like... Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's one of the funny things. I think a good signing off point is tabletop is different at every table. Sometimes when you argue with people online, it's because you're just arguing about playing two completely different games that just happen to share some similar rules.
It's not weeb shit. It's not weeb shit. Stop the slander.
So, like, whatever works for your game to make it more fun in the end. Your builds should consider the kind of game that you're making it for, and as well the enjoyment at the table. Playing a thief who's pickpocketing literally everyone, even other player characters, is just not a good build choice unless everyone at the table happens to be cool with it. Then I guess it's whatever. But, you encounter several knights led by a single knight approximately 12 feet tall. Moss and branches adorn his hood. And as you draw closer, a single word reverberates through the clearing. Knee?
Yeah, how many people, if you ran a Monty Python reference, how many people in our game do you think would actually get it?
I didn't get it there for a second until you mentioned
Monty Python, the Holy Grail, yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it now.
I feel like very few.
Yeah, I don't know if a lot of our friend group actually has watched it at this point. I don't know.
I mean, what's our constant joke in the friend group? Are you even old enough to know blank?
Yeah, well, that's because there's a near there's an 8-year difference in age between some of us and the other half. So
You can always say me too, like my name as well. I'm part of that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I've seen Monty Python the Holy Grail a good few times. That movie's very fun.
Shakes his cane. All right, but we are approaching the end here. So we have in our Discord now the forms for filling out for our future games that we're going to look at for, on the channel here. So if you have a game you really want us to check out that we have not already checked out, speaking to you Lancer boys out there, go ahead, fill out the form, let us know. Next Thursday, we will pick out a handful of the choices, and we will put a poll up, and we'll run that game in the beginning weeks of December.
And I know we had this idea before. Did we want to go over the top ones in on stream? I know it's an idea we had.
The top ones,
the four or the list of submissions we got. I know we talked about discussing some fun ones on stream, as a tiny little segment. Here's some cool recommendations we got.
I mean, we might. I mean, I'm gonna be releasing the poll that day anyway, so we might talk
That's
about.
fair.
We might talk about it.
And
So.
a thing I'll mention, it's something I put in the Discord announcement. This is going to make it a lot easier to track. So, because we have a lot of streams where we have people like throwing a bunch of names our way, and we're always like, "Oh, that seems cool," but like, it's hard to manage every single one. If you have like a wild thought in your head, ooh, this tabletop system, throw it in here, because it's like one of the real only ways that it's going to be put on our radar. Because it can be said during a stream or in a comment or whatever, we'll forget it exists. Like, I'll forget it exists 15 minutes after it's said. I don't have a great memory. If it's put in here, I'm going to keep that shit on fucking lock. So yeah, toss it in there, fill it out, sell your system. It'll be really fun. I'm really excited to like keep up on this list and really like monitor what's being put in there. So yeah, go fucking hog wild.
I can't wait. I'm very excited to get back into doing the weeklies. We stopped, or the monthly like game polls. We stopped because one, we had to get some games off the list that had been sitting there for quite a while.
Yeah.
Plus we had our Halloween one shot. So
that one was planned for
and
a
I went
while.
to Norway. So we got all that out of the way. Now we can go back into just checking out new game systems every month. And
which
looking
we
into it.
already got one submission, so all y'all slackers better get working.
Actually, you know what? And right here at the end as well, I do want to do more stuff with Lancer. I actually do.
Lancer's the best.
If I find some way to fit some Lancer in, I might get some Lancer in. I really enjoy Lancer a lot, and I really would like to play it some more.
Lancer scratches that itch of like both being a good war game and a tabletop game, so I'm super into it.
It's a good sci-fi mech game, which is really hard to find.
It's also hard for me to give a shit about mechs, and it found a way. The mech design is very good.
It's
I don't like normal typical mech stuff because I find it really like boring. But Lancer's got a lot of very good designs that make things very interesting.
Yeah, the Eldritch Horror mixing into mech design is a very good choice.
Exactly.
But all right, we're gonna go home. So good night, everyone. Hope y'all enjoy. We'll be here next week for another table talk, as well as getting the poll ready for what games we'll be checking out in early December.
In the meantime, if you like Warhammer stuff, hop over to my channel, Glue Boy. It's on the YouTube, like in the little recommended section there. I just put a video out about Emperor's Children. They're pretty cool.
Yeah. And also be on the lookout tomorrow as I'll be putting my updated archetype tier list out. So if you're curious about the archetypes I've been doing and my impressions of them and where I score them, you can check them out there. But with that, I guess we're going to go ahead and end stream. Good night, everyone.
Yeah. Good night.